Let's set the scene to February 24th, the day when Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to move troops into Ukraine after months of escalations. At Ukraine school, a teacher is just adapting to her first year at the school. Her name, Julia Strul. A mathematics teacher at sixth grade, she was born in the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic in 1989. She left the Soviet Union in 1991. Seeing the news that the Russians have decided to invade Ukraine, she has decided to tell her side of the story and how she viewed the conflict. I'm joined today by Ms. Strul. Thank you very much.
Hi, Barry.
Did you ever think that a war would ever break out between the two countries?
No, I didn't think anything like this could happen in this day and age, period. Obviously we saw the troops looming, you see the satellite images.
Right.
But even if you ask somebody there, no one thought that something to this scale could happen, where apartment buildings would be being bombed
Right.
and hospitals would be attacked. It's not something I thought could happen in 2022.
And what was your immediate reaction when the Russian troops have crossed the border?
Confusion. I think confused, like what's happening, how bad is this going to get? What does this mean for us in America? What does it mean for the rest of the world? And then quickly into like great sadness and sorrow for those people.
Right. And why do you think Vladimir Putin decided just to invade Ukraine?
I think that's a complicated question. I think he yearns for a country and a time when the Soviet Union had the reins, when they were an empire of sorts, and that is no longer the case. Ukraine is moving towards a democratic Western society, whereas Putin wants to maintain control of his people, and that goes democratics and this society that we all live in goes in complete opposition to what he wants.
Yeah, and Putin called this conflict a special military operation.
Mm-hmm.
What are your comments on Putin's usage of this phrase?
I think that Putin is a master of propaganda. We see that by the way that he's controlled his media, and to the point where people who call this a war or an attack can be given 15 years in prison at least.
Right.
So I think this is just an example of how he is controlling his people and controlling the narrative.
Right. And how has the war affected you and your family here in the United States?
So we're very lucky in that we live in the United States. My very close family lives in the United States. We have family in Ukraine, cousins and dear family friends of my parents who they grew up with, and these people are beyond affected. They can't get out. We see the refugees leaving, but the refugees are the lucky ones.
Right.
Most people cannot get out. The humanitarian corridors where theoretically people could leave, those are being attacked too. So people can't leave.
So you also said you have family members in Ukraine. So
Yeah.
how are they staying safe at the moment?
Everyone is in the basements of their apartment buildings. So Kiev, where I was born, most of the housing there are these big giant apartment buildings, and so if you can imagine every single person that lives in that building huddled together in the basement, it sounds horrific.
Putin said that it should be noted that Ukraine actually has never had traditions of real statehood. How would you respond to this comment?
That's completely untrue. I think that Ukraine had its own culture and language and traditions and folklore long before Moscow was even in existence. If you compare two pictures, Ukraine and Kiev, it's a cosmopolitan empire, whereas Moscow was still a swampland at a certain point. So to claim that Ukraine didn't have traditions and language and things like that before is a blatant lie. I think history will show that. But I think Russia, it's always been in the Soviet, the goal to suppress the Ukrainian culture. And that you can see that through history over centuries.
Right. And Putin has also said that Russia is purely defending itself from the gang of drug addicts and neo-Nazis. I mean, this claim is quite outrageous, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the Nazi claim when you have Zelensky, who is Jewish, his parents are Jewish.
Right.
Again, I think it goes back to the propaganda, Putin's technique of using what they're about to do and claiming the other side is doing it. So claiming that Ukraine was trying to attack them when in reality they were planning a full-scale invasion. And so I think that just draws right back into his propaganda.
Yeah. And as the war rages on, both sides are trying to sue for peace. And here are Putin's demands for peace. Ukraine to recognize Crimea Peninsula and Crimea as Russian land, recognize Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics, and change its constitution to guarantee that it will not join NATO or the EU. That's for Ukraine. How do you see these demands?
I think if Ukraine had any desire to meet any of those demands, they would have done so. Ukraine has shown that they are maintaining their pride and they are maintaining their commitment to being their own country,
Right.
And to do the things that they've promised to do, which is have a democratic society where people have choice and where people have freedoms. I think just seeing how they have fought this war so far in the last 2 weeks, people thought Kiev was going to fall on day one. That was the prediction that many top people predicted. Kiev has still not fallen. Russia thought they were going to come in and they told their soldiers, everyone's going to welcome you with flowers and thank you for liberating them. People are throwing homemade Molotov cocktails at their tanks. So the will of these people and their desire to not fall shows that these demands, I don't think, will be met, at least not on those terms.
Yeah, it is quite interesting because on March the 15th, the day we were shooting this interview, Zelensky said that Ukraine will not join NATO, but will not change its constitution. Is this a first step towards peace?
I think so. I think Zelensky wants to protect his people. I think he's shown himself to be a leader of the people by just the sheer fact that he hasn't left yet. He is still fighting alongside everyone there. I think he's been asking to meet with Putin face to face. He wants to reach a resolution.
Right.
So maybe this is a first step to finding a resolution by not joining NATO. But I don't think that he's going to give in to having Russia overtake Ukraine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he has chosen to remain in Kiev during the length of this fighting. Just how conducive is this towards Ukrainian national morale?
I think it is everything. I think the fact that when he was offered a safety and a ride out, and he said, "I don't need a ride. I need help. I need weapons." The fact that he's posting videos every day and showing that he is right there on the ground, he is showing every single person that is also still living there that we are fighting this war and we are not going to take this lying down. We're not going to be defeated. I think had he left on day one, I think the whole country would have fallen. People look to their leaders, and I think he has shown himself throughout these last couple of weeks that he is very much a leader, and I think he'll go down in history books as such.
It is quite interesting because Volodymyr Zelensky was not a politician by trade. He was a comedian.
Yeah.
He was quite popular in Ukraine. So how is he doing in the theater of war at the moment?
I think that he's really proven himself. Even if you ask my parents, who very closely follow the news there, they probably would have told you that when he was elected, no one took him very seriously. He was, charming and people loved him, and I think he made great promises. And so I think he was able to win by the landslide that he did because people liked him. However, was he taken as seriously as a leader that was going to lead the country out of maybe some sort of battle like they're in right now? Nobody would have guessed. I think he has stepped up from the first second and proven himself.
Absolutely. And in terms of, Zelensky is asking for a no-fly zone these days, calling on the West. Basically, one day he said, this morning Kiev is getting bombed, while the most powerful nations looking at Kiev from far away. He has asked for a no-fly zone. Do you think this is realistic today?
I don't. I think that a no-fly zone would entail a lot of logistical, financial, just so many burdens on our country that I don't think, at this moment, I don't think that the United States is going to be able to do that. I think also a no-fly zone would indicate that we're ready to step into World War III. And it sounds to me like our country has kind of made a commitment to not having boots on the ground unless 100% necessary. While I look at that and think, oh my goodness, as on a human level, how can we let this go on? Because it's terrible what's happening there. But to think about the consequences of entering a world war and what that means to have a world war between two nuclear powers, I think that's something that our world has never experienced before. And I can see how something very catastrophic can come from that. And so that's scary for me to think about.
As of today, Russia has kept moving towards Kiev and other Ukrainian cities. The mayor of Mariupol has been kidnapped, and Ukrainian people are protesting. However, the war rages on. It has affected two countries' economy and also the lives of two nations. But the most important thing is that the war has affected and also gripped the hearts of millions of people worldwide who oppose war and promotes peace. This is Julia Stroll's story, but you also have to remember there are other millions of Ukrainians and their stories and their views on the conflict. This is The Patriot, UPenn School student newspaper. My name is Barry Yao.